All right, good afternoon, class. Welcome back to the counseling techniques in the helping profession. This is our second week, so I hope you enjoyed some of the first week. Just to review, we talked a lot about being the person of the counselor and the importance of that. Like a lot of different professions, a carpenter will have his tools, a mechanic has his tools. As a counselor, we ourselves are the tool. So we bring a lot to the table. You guys have your experiences, your expertise, your knowledge, your gifts even that God's given you as what you bring to the table. What I'm excited about today, because today we're actually going to talk through some skills. What are the basics that we need to know? We talked about the helping profession, what it means to, what is counseling, what it means to be a counselor. So today we're going to expand on that. What are the skills we need to actually help someone in that helping profession? So just brainstorm with me a little bit, and I'm going to write them up on the board. But what do you guys think? What do you need to be able to help someone in a counseling setting?
Knowledge to do so.
Okay, knowledge.
Understanding.
What kind of knowledge?
I would say that initially would be the aspect of the area of which you're
Okay,
counseling them on.
right. And if you remember from last class, we talked about knowledge as one of the three stools. You got the person, the counselor, you got knowledge, and you've got skills. So, good.
I'd say you also need an understanding of the situation and the people involved.
Of the client as you're working with? Okay, good. Understanding of the client. You can't help them unless you know what is going on with them, right? What else? Any other ideas?
Some degree of empathy.
Ooh, empathy.
Patience.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to slap our clients, right? It's not necessarily ethical. But what do you mean by empathy?
So if someone's going down a road, it'd be helpful if you could at least kind of understand what that road entails. Like if you have a client with drug addiction, maybe you've had close friends who deal with drug addictions or something like that.
Right. Yeah, so the ability to kind of go in there with them, that understanding the emotional piece too. Good. Anything else? You guys are already coming at this from a good perspective. So what I want to do is I want to introduce some skills, kind of run you through some of the basics. You guys have already read in your chapter some of those skills that you should know. But I want to go over them briefly again, kind of review them, and then what we're going to do is have a little demonstration. I'm going to demonstrate some of these things to you guys, and then I'm going to have you guys practice them just within this setting. So one of the things we need to understand when we're talking basic understanding of counseling, and this was in your text, was content versus process. And the differences between the two. Content has to do with what the person's actually telling us. A lot of us get that pretty much, right? If someone's talking to me, I'm trying to help somebody, okay, this is what you're telling me. But we as counselors, we need to know a little bit deeper than that. We actually need to understand the process. Content has to do with information. Whereas process is not just the words that the person is saying, but it's actually the manner that it's actually given, the manner that is presented. Content's more about what people talk about. The process is how people interact, the meaning, more feeling and meaning behind it. Can we actually understand that? Because that's what makes some of the things that we might not understand understandable, if we can understand the process. This we can kind of understand, all of us, to the most part, we would interact with others who understand that. And for the most part, a lot of us understand this. This has to do with an emotional intelligence too, which is actually becoming more and more a predictor of success. If you're not just high IQ, but if you're high EQ, you actually understand some of those nuances. But once we understand the difference between the two, we're combining both of these. The next thing, or what we're going to talk about today, is building rapport. Anybody know what that means?
Establishing a relationship with the individual.
Establishing a relationship, right? Which is basically the definition that I had. Establishing a helping relationship, right? It's coming out of your textbook too. We can't do that without proper rapport. Research is actually across the board saying that the biggest predictor on success for a helping profession is not the skill or the technique that you're using, even the theoretical background. It's, can you establish that therapeutic relationship with someone? And that's building rapport. So there's a couple of skills that we're going to talk about that we need to do in order to start building rapport. How do we establish that relationship? How do we even get somebody to interact with us in a way that we can actually help them?
I'd say find like an unrelated common ground that you
Okay.
both share, and you can start working on that aspect. If you like fishing or hunting, motorcycles, cars, whatever.
Okay, right. We'll talk about self-disclosure probably in our next lesson too. How do we overcome some of those boundaries? Because we want to maintain a professional boundary to some extent, but self-disclosure can't be that to be one of those important factors. But there's three things that we're going to talk about today with building rapport. The first one is to create a safe haven for the client. The client has to feel like they're in a safe environment in order to begin establishing that rapport. We'll talk about that in a second. The next one is active listening. You guys know what passive listening is, right? Anybody ever experienced someone who's passively listening to you? What's that like, Caleb?
It's very discouraging.
Okay.
Talking to a wall, there's kind of been one.
Yeah,
It's frustrating.
it's we see today it's the phones, right? Have you ever been talking to someone and they got a text or pulled out their phone? What did that feel like?
They weren't there as far as part of the conversation.
They didn't
Yeah,
care.
They didn't care. Yeah, I'm not as important as whatever you have going on, right? So we don't want to be passive or even almost a negative where we're not even listening at all, but actively listening. What does that look like? Then the third thing we want to do is what Tyler talked about over here: communicate empathy. How do we do that? How do we actually communicate those things to someone? Right? All right, so let's just break these down. Let's talk about the first one, creating a safe haven. Right? Why is that important? People only will begin to open up and begin to share some things. As in counseling, we're dealing with some pretty heavy things at times. Some maybe even embarrassing things, very intimate details about a person. They only want to do that if they feel like they're safe. We know from attachment structure that people will only grow emotionally, grow in their identity if they feel safe, not just physically, but feel safe emotionally. So creating that, even within the counseling session, that, okay, this is a safe place, I can begin opening up. A lot of the ethics that we deal with in counseling is important too, because that helps us create that safe environment. That confidentiality provides that we can say, hey, nothing's going outside of this, right? we can be safe. We don't want our clients in their brainstem as far as unsafety, where they're in a fight or flight. But a lot of them come in very anxious. And a lot of us as counselors, we might come in anxious too, if we don't have the skills or we don't know necessarily what to say, or we're new. But hopefully as we go into some of these skills, it'll get you some confidence so that you're relaxed, you're providing that. And your book went into detail with it too, of even how you set up the area where you counsel. Make sure there's not, a paintball game going right outside your door, right? That's probably not conducive to helping somebody get better. How do we create that safe environment? Even the seating arrangements, even the lighting, the temperature of the room can all affect that. So it's very critical creating that safe place. The second part, active listening. This one, I'm going to camp out a little bit to help give you guys some specifics. One of the important things we want to remember as counselors is we don't want to fix the problem. Why not? Seems like that's what we're there for, right? Anybody have an idea?
You really can't. I mean, people have to be able to fix it themselves. It's not really.
Exactly. I can't be the solution because I want you to be able to know where your struggles are, where the blockages are. You overcome them, then you graduate. You don't need counseling anymore because you're doing the skills on yourself. So if I come in with a solution, and we want to do this all the time in our other relationships. Someone comes in, they have a problem. Well, here's a solution to the problem. But what does that communicate? What are you actually communicating to somebody if you come in with just a quick fix right away?
They can't fix themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't really care that deeply about it.
Exactly. There's two things when we talk about active listening. That are the paramount things we want to communicate. Value and understanding. You want to communicate to that person that I value you as a person, and I'm actually taking the time to understand you. If someone comes to me with a problem and I come quick with, oh, here's a solution, what am I saying? I'm saying, well, I'm not care enough. I don't value your opinion, your emotions, what you're going through. Here's the solution. And it hurts all those other areas. We can't communicate. We're not communicating empathy. We're actually affecting that safe relationship when we come in with the solution right away. So that's one of the number one things that we as counselors want to do. We want to avoid that advice giving, that fix it right away. Because maybe we don't have all the information either. But we need to understand more things that are different. So how do we do that? How do we communicate value and understanding? And the book covers a lot of different things, but I want to just real briefly cover two aspects. And that's reflection and the solar, how we're actually, some of those body language things that we're doing. So the first thing I'm going to cover is solar. If you guys read your textbook, you know this, but I'm going to go over it again. And it's an acronym. Right? How we're actually communicating. So the first one, the S, sitting squarely. What we do and how we actually, the body language is so critical. If I'm talking to Anthony and I'm like this, what am I communicating?
You're angled away from him, so you're not really giving your.
Yeah, I mean, he's over here, right? If I want to communicate that I value and understand, I'm going to sit squarely in front of him, right? Even, these are simple things, and even me, I struggle with them as well. because the last part is the one that I really struggle with. But the O stands for open posture. Generally, if I'm crossing my arms and my legs, what am I communicating? Generally,
Irritation.
You're closed off.
closed off. I'm, apathetic. Are you closed off and apathetic more? Yeah. And this is where I struggle too, because sometimes this is me being comfortable. Not that I don't like you, but we gotta understand what that communicates. Right, the L is for leaning, where I actually communicate my interest if I'm actually leaning forward. I'm communicating I'm actually interested in it, rather than, I'm sitting back. You can kind of communicate apathy. There we go. Hunter's leaning forward. He's really interacting with us. All right, the I stands for eye contact. You guys know this. If I'm not making eye contact and I'm talking to Anthony, and hey Anthony, how's your day, man? You going to do everything fine? Right? Eye contact can be depending on even culture, can be somewhat difficult. A lot of times, certain cultures, eye contact could also be a sign of disrespect if I hold too much eye contact. But we still need to maintain some eye contact, operating within our own culture. No eye contact is not good, but we want to also be culturally aware that it always doesn't mean what we think it does. And then the R stands for relaxed. And this is the one where I struggle with, because I'm most relaxed a lot of times when I'm leaning back and I've crossed my legs or my arms. But is that really fitting these other things? Because I gotta know what I'm communicating. But you do have to be relaxed. If I'm all uptight and I'm, too concerned about everything, I'm not creating that safe environment. I want to be relaxed. I want to be myself. This is again where you bring yourself into the counseling setting. The second thing I want to talk about is reflection. And this is what I'm going to demonstrate here in a second with my pre-prepared partner today, is how do we work on reflecting skills? How do I communicate I value and I understand? And the book talked a lot about ways in which to do that. And reflection was one of them, that active listening. There's 3 areas that I really focus on, and there are deeper levels each that you go down. There's content, feeling, and meaning. And each one of these communicates a different level of understanding. If I'm reflecting content, let's say my wife comes in from work and she says, I had a really bad day at work today. And I'm reflecting content. I'd say, so you said you had a bad day at work. Right? But she has the opportunity to correct me because she says, no, I had a really bad day at work. Oh, okay. By me reflecting, I caught on that, wait a minute, there's something important here. She said she had a really bad day, but I only said she had a bad day. I missed that really part. So reflecting content back can help our clients even, is this what you're saying? Did I get this right? Because it communicates I value what you're saying, and I also am trying to understand what you're saying as well. The second part is a little bit deeper, is the feeling. What's the emotion the client is giving me? Maybe it's a feeling word. Maybe they don't know what they're feeling, but maybe I would reflect that back. It seems like you're frustrated because of that, right? I might say, in the same scenario, my wife comes in and says, I had a really bad day at work. And I say, she had a really bad day at work, and it seems like you're sad about that. Because she just seems down. her body language, she comes in and slumps on the couch maybe. The third part is meaning. This takes some effort. This takes conceptualization of the client. Why is that important to that person? That's what you want to answer. So my wife comes in and says she had a really bad day at work. She slumps down on the couch. And I might understand why it's important to her.
10 minutes.
So I would communicate. So I understand this is what you're saying is you had a really bad day at work. And I know having a good day at work is tied to how you are as a person. Right? So I would really want to try to focus in on that. If I understand that meaning, now I've really created. Did I solve her problem? No. I would lose that opportunity to communicate value and understanding if I just came in and said, oh, you had a bad day at work? Well, you know you shouldn't have talked to so-and-so, and you didn't do this, and that would just sweep all that off and under the rug. So, I'm going to demonstrate some of these skills. The last part, communicating empathy, in the book talked about minimal encouragers, where you try to elicit more information from a client. But I'm going to have Stephen come up here. I'm going to demonstrate this real quick. And Stephen's going to tell me, doesn't matter, tell me about a situation that he wants to tell me about. I think something that made him frustrated. So, Stephen, so tell me about the situation that you told me about earlier.
Sure. Essentially, it would be like in the school situation here, there's a lot of people in one sink, and the dishes, from some people, they have a tendency of just throwing it in there, and then as the week goes on, dishes get higher and higher and higher in the sink, and probably by halfway through the week, you can't even get in there to either wash your own dishes or fill up a container or anything like that. Whereas if the person would just take their dish, cup, fork, whatever, wash it, and then stick it up in the drying rack, it leaves it available for everybody else as far as staff, employees, students, whomever, can go in there. And it's a visual aspect. If you've got tours, groups of people coming in to look at the school, it just, if it looks nicer and cleaner right there in that area as far as in the kitchen, that.
So you see some practical aspects of having clean dishes, but did it also frustrate you? I mean,
Maybe
seems
like when one or two dishes in there, it's not that bad, but when they start getting more and more built up, or they're like all over the counter and you just can't even get in there, or you need a dish and now there's a whole, dish, your silverware, whatever is in there, and you've got to pick up or clean up after somebody else.
what does that mean if you have to clean up after someone else? Is that
I mean, if it's like, once or twice, it's not a big deal, but when it's a constant repetitive thing and you're always, taking care of that other person, it starts to get frustrating because they're essentially, laying themselves on you and other people.
So you're frustrated because they're not being considerate of you, it's not even thinking of you, and now you're having to pick up for.
Not just me, but, for other people too, because it's, like I said, it's a working environment type thing, so it's their other coworkers or other students.
So being responsible is pretty important to you.
Sure.
And when people aren't that way,
it's not conducive to a good, smooth working environment.
okay. But how does that affect you specifically?
Me specifically, I mean, coming from my background, it's irritating. It's harder on a civilian aspect just because it's not a military, it's not.
You can't make somebody do something.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, whatever, you don't care, I don't care about you because there's no consequences essentially, as far as how I see it to them.
Okay.
Because they're just, they're there, or whatever.
That would be frustrating to have someone just you have to pay, I mean, you have to do the dishes sometimes, is that,
I would, or other people would.
yeah. So somebody's gotta do it,
Mhm.
and that falls on you sometimes.
Sure.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Stephen. Now, what did you see there? Out of the things that we talked about, anything?
A lot of inflation.
Okay, I reflected.
You
I
kind of,
think I only asked 2 questions, which I was trying not to ask any, but I was too tempted to. Right? But what were most of them? I did some minimal encouragers, trying to get them talking. Was trying to understand really trying to understand what was going on, what was the frustration, what was the feeling, and then what was the meaning behind it. Right? Because I didn't know. So I was really information gathering. And obviously, if we would work on rapport, then hopefully some of that would happen. Stephen, how was that for you?
Okay.
Okay. Did you feel like I understood?
I mean, granted, if we had more time.
If we had more
you know,
time, we
we
could delve
could really
into that.
delved into that.
Right, we can tie it
Got
to
to
all
the-
those past issues, and, well, we don't have a full hour session, but, what I'm gonna do is, in the last couple of minutes, I want you guys to pair up, and I want you guys to just talk through the same thing. Maybe something that made you frustrated, and you're gonna trade off, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to try to avoid asking any questions at all. Okay? And notice how I started with Stephen. I said, so tell me about this. And that's always a neat way to do it, is tell me more instead of asking the question. So take a few minutes, you may have only time to get to one, and then in maybe 3 minutes or so I'll wrap up and we'll come back together. So just take a few minutes and do that.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so there's some more on it. What do I tell you about?
Tell me about something.
Tell me about your situation.
Tell me anything.
This way?
What question?
Something going on like I just have Oh, okay. So, what was going on? You start. Well, okay, again. Coffee or place out. Did you go past
Bad drivers.
just one day.
So people who drive slowly in the left lane.
What frustrated you about
A, it's a state law. The left lane's only for passing. So when they're doing like kind of the speed limit or impeding traffic, driving like right next to somebody in the right lane, and there's like no cars in front of them, so they've got more than enough room to accelerate and get over, and it would free up the whole left lane for people passing.
Like, was it just a... So you said the dress code or anything?
Yes, he said that.
Money,
It's very frustrating.
What are you gonna say?
someone else.
All right, let me bring it back real quick. You probably only had a chance to just do one of you do it, but I saw some good things. I saw some solar. I saw Caleb you leaning forward. That was really good. Good eye contact. You guys are well on your way. But what was that like? Was it hard to not ask questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. It's very tempting. A lot of times we want to balance question asking. We don't ask too many, but we don't want to ask not enough. We need to ask some questions, right? So your assignment for this week, when we come back next time, is there's the online video you're going to watch on Blackboard, and you're going to write your reflection based on that, and try to identify some of these things that we've talked about today, and then write those out, what you actually see in that session. And then we'll jump back next time into some more of these skills. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Got it?